The honourable member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak to Bill C-14, an act to amend the Criminal Code and to make related amendments to other acts related to medical assistance in dying. I support this bill at second reading, but it does need amending. I will start today with a story. 20 years ago, my wife Audrey and I adopted a beautiful sable Sheltie dog by the name of Princess Diana of Cornwall. She was named at a time when we lived on Cornwall Drive in Port Coquitlam, and the world was abuzz with a royal wedding involving two people named Charles and Diana. Princess was a great dog, but unfortunately, when she was about 11 years old, she got cancer. We were already living in our current home city of Cranbrook, located in the Rocky Mountain area of British Columbia. As the cancer progressed, Princess was living with more and more pain and discomfort. We consulted regularly with our local vet until one day he said to us, "She is terminal and in a lot of pain. I think the best thing we can do for her is to end her suffering." He asked us to bring her back the next day. We took her home to say our goodbyes, and the next day I brought Princess back to the veterinarian. He asked me, "Wayne, do you want to leave her with me, or would you like to stay?" I said I would stay. I held her in my arms and watched the needle go into her paw. She laid down and died in my arms. As I stood there with tears in my eyes, I thought, if I was ever in intolerable pain from an incurable disease, this is how I want to leave this world, a needle in my paw, lying in the arms of someone I love. I became a believer in physician-assisted suicide right there 20 years ago, for me personally. Now, I'm not suggesting that the death of a pet and the death of a human are equivalent, though they certainly can feel much the same, as many of you who have lost a beloved pet will know. We need to take even more care that we've got it right when we're talking about euthanasia through a human lens. As you know, in February 2015, a unanimous Supreme Court ruling established the charter-protected right of competent adult Canadians experiencing enduring and intolerable suffering as a result of a grievous and irremediable medical condition, including a disease, disability, or illness, to access medical assistance in dying. Our party, the NDP, is committed to implementing the Supreme Court-ordered decision with balance and sensitivity, respecting the autonomy of patients, the rights of healthcare practitioners and vulnerable individuals, and respecting the fundamentally personal nature of this issue to every Canadian. In other words, we need to get this legislation right. Last week, when I was back in my riding of Kootenay, Columbia, I met with Bendina Miller, past president of the Canadian Association for Community Living. The CACL was one of the main supporters of the Vulnerable Person Standard, whose purpose is to protect the vulnerable in Canada as Bill C-14, Medical Assistance in Dying, moves forward. While believing that the bill in its current form takes an appropriate steps towards addressing the vulnerability of people living with disability, they believe some improvements are required to meet the Supreme Court's intent that the legislation must provide fair access for assisted death and also protect vulnerable persons who may be influenced or induced to use the system to die. Canadian Association for Community Living are recommending 5 areas of substantive amendment to this draft bill, and I will summarize them here. Number 1, Bill C-14 should be amended to extend the current requirement for judicial oversight until such time as a study of the merits and implications of the bill are clearly understood. Number 2, include in the bill an explicit legal requirement to identify, explore, and record the sources of a person's suffering and attempt to address the motivations of their request for death. 3, Bill C-14 should be amended to meet the requirements of the Carter decision, specifying that a voluntary request for medical assistance in dying cannot be made as a result of external pressure or any form of inducement. Number 4, Bill C-14 be amended to specify that the minister will make, not may make, regulations regarding the mandatory reporting of information about requests and provision of assisted dying, and 5, mandate a palliative care or other professional evaluation to ensure patients' right to informed consent by having information about the full range of available treatments and supports that could ease their suffering. Mr. Speaker, this bill should not proceed without an enhanced national palliative care strategy, which is clearly missing in the Liberal government's 2016-2017 budget. Mr. Speaker, back in November, I had the pleasure of meeting new members of Parliament from all of the parties represented here in the House, except the Green Party. I was struck by how consistent the words were from all of my colleagues. I am here to work collaboratively to build a better Canada. Those were very encouraging for me as a new MP, because that is also why I am here. When I'm back home in my riding, sharing with my constituents what we were doing here in the House, I tell them we are working on 3 bills in particular that will fundamentally change Canada going forward. First of all, proportional representation voting. Second, legalizing marijuana. And 3, physician-assisted suicide. This is the first of those 3 bills to come to the House for debate and further study, and we need to work together collaboratively to build a better future for Canadians that does 3 things through this bill. Maximizes their willingness to live through expanded palliative care, ensures that our vulnerable citizens are protected, and 3, gives our citizens the Supreme Court assured right to choose to die in the arms of someone who loves them if they are experiencing enduring and intolerable suffering as a result of a grievous and irremediable medical condition. Let's amend this bill collaboratively and give Canadians the best possible outcome on this very important and emotional issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.